A Mortal's Journey to Immortality Episode 338. In the previous episode, Han Li arrived at the Grand Assembly hosted by the three great clans of Guaning. Quietly observing the bustling gathering of cultivators, while exploring the lively plaza filled with trade stalls and mysterious artifacts, he suddenly sensed something unsettling, a hidden presence beneath the mountain that carried the faint aura of death. Unbeknownst to him, deep underground, a crowned cultivator awakened inside a black coffin, alarmed by a momentary feeling of being watched. Back on the surface, Han Li continued his exploration until an old cultivator named Jin Yuan approached him with an unusual request to appraise a strange treasure he could not understand. Intrigued, Han Li agreed to examine it in a private room, unaware that this simple invitation might open the door to yet another layer of secrets. At the end of the previous episode, the two entered a hidden room, with Han Li wondering whether this mysterious treasure would be worth his time. What will happen next? Stay tuned. And the story continues. The old man Jin Yuan chuckled and said, "Relax, fellow Taoist. I went through quite some danger to obtain it. It is definitely unordinary." Han Li nodded and said nothing else as he led Jin Yuan to a building at the side. The building was unassuming from the outside, but as they stepped inside, it opened into a massive hall that stretched over 100 meters in width. The hall was otherwise empty, except for a middle-aged woman sitting cross-legged on a prayer mat in the center. Her eyes opened immediately when she noticed Han Li and Jin Yuan entering. And she stood gracefully. "Since fellow Taoists have arrived," she said, her voice calm and welcoming, "it seems you either wish to look at some of the hall's collection of magic techniques, or perhaps you require a hidden room to exchange cultivation experiences with one another." Han Li did not hesitate. "A hidden room is what we want," he said calmly. He had little interest in the records of foreign cultivators. He knew that any magic techniques displayed openly here would likely be mundane. The woman nodded and smiled. "That will be 1 spirit stone. In addition, you will lose your rune when you leave the hall." She then reached for her waist and produced several miniature runes, each only a few inches in size, from her hand. Han Li was momentarily stunned. He took one out curiously, weighing it in his hand. It felt impossibly light, almost as if it were made of air. Sensing his surprise, the woman asked, "Is this the first time that fellow Taoist has seen a hidden fortune room?" "That's right. Is this a magic tool?" Han Li asked, genuinely intrigued. She nodded thoughtfully. "The hidden fortune room can be considered both a magic tool and not a magic tool. It is simple to use. You only need to pour in enough spiritual energy to activate it. A low-grade hidden fortune room, like the one you hold, can expand to a modest size and is primarily for privacy. Higher-grade rooms, however, can have spell formations, restrictions, and even protections on the level of true magical treasures. They are excellent for secrecy, as outsiders cannot easily interfere or eavesdrop." Han Li felt a wave of shock. He had heard of hidden rooms being rented here, but he had not imagined that such strange and sophisticated items existed. Nothing like this existed in the Heavenly South. "Many thanks for the explanation, fellow Taoist," he said politely. He then moved to the side chamber the woman indicated, Jin Yuan following closely behind. Jin Yuan shook his head with a slight smile. "It is not surprising that you have not seen one before. Hidden fortune rooms are normally only purchased by wandering cultivators or high-grade cultivators. Given your young age and cultivation background, it makes sense that you would have little need for such a tool. They are also quite expensive. Spirit stones are often better spent on magic tools or medicines." "Oh, how much does an ordinary hidden fortune room cost?" Han Li asked casually. Jin Yuan explained in detail. "A low-grade room costs a little over 100 spirit stones. High-grade rooms, which include spell formations and restrictions, cost far more than magic tools of the same grade. There are many types, from pagodas and pavilions to courtyards, and the grandest can even resemble small-scale cave residences." "A small-scale cave residence?" Han Li asked, astonished. Jin Yuan chuckled. "Do not jump to conclusions. The simplest hidden fortune room of cave residence scale would cost tens of thousands of spirit stones. Such items are beyond the reach of ordinary cultivators like us. Han Li nodded, his expression returning to calm neutrality. They arrived at the side chamber, where 6 stone rooms glimmered with white light. They were enlarged versions of the miniature room Han Li held. Curiously, Han Li extended his spiritual sense to probe one of the rooms, only to find a restriction that blocked his perception. It was a simple restriction, easily broken, but the master of the room would immediately detect such interference. This was an elegant way to ensure privacy. Han Li tossed the miniature room into the air, and a faint azure light sparked around his hand. He poured spiritual energy into it. The room trembled and glowed with heat before expanding rapidly in a flash of white light. A muffled bang echoed through the hall as the room grew to a width of 10 meters. Han Li glanced at the new stone room and gestured politely. "Brother Jin, please enter." Jin Yuan stepped inside first, smiling. "Although I have seen hidden fortune rooms before, I have not had the opportunity to enter many." Han Li followed, shutting the door behind him. Inside, the room was not large, but it was carefully decorated. At its center sat a stone table with matching chairs, and a stone couch rested nearby. Jin Yuan took his seat, and Han Li joined him, activating the room's restrictions for privacy. Jin Yuan spoke first, his tone attentive. "I heard you had a few things you wished to ask about. What would you like to know?" "It is not much," Han Li replied calmly. "I am preparing for a short stay in Guaning Prefecture, but I have been unable to learn much about the local noble clans. You seem to know about them, and I hope you can explain." Jin Yuan relaxed, smiling. "That is no problem. I know much about Guaning Prefecture and the wider Liao province. What specifically would you like to know?" Han Li leaned back and said, "Since the prefecture is dominated by 3 noble clans, could you introduce them to me and tell me about significant events that have happened over the past few years?" Jin Yuan began in a measured tone. The land was historically ruled by Confucian sects, with many noble clans originating from them. However, the 4 great clans of this prefecture had diverse origins, except for the Kong clan. Han Li raised an eyebrow. "The 4 great noble clans? I thought there were only 3? Jin Yuan chuckled. "It became 3 only recently. 10 years ago, there were 4. The Feng clan committed some unknown offense against the others, and in a single night, the remaining clans exterminated all Feng direct disciples. At the time, the Feng clan was discussing something important, gathering all direct disciples. That was when the tragedy occurred." Han Li listened intently, comparing Jin Yuan's account with what he had heard from Feng Yu. Some details seemed unusual, but he continued to pay attention. Jin Yuan then detailed the histories and current standings of the noble clans in Guaning Prefecture, showing his broad knowledge of the Liao province. Half an hour later, Han Li was satisfied, having gained a thorough understanding of the cultivation world in that region, far beyond what Cao Mengrong could have provided. Han Li smiled politely. "Thank you for your time. Now, let us move on to your strange treasure. Could you bring it out? I wish to broaden my experience." Jin Yuan's eyes brightened. "Of course, I still hope you can help me inspect it." He produced a jade box from his storage pouch and placed it carefully on the stone table. Han Li's gaze swept over the box, and almost immediately, he felt a strange energy radiating from it. His heart quickened as the item repelled his spiritual sense while simultaneously piquing his curiosity. Jin Yuan opened the box to reveal a fist-sized sphere of dazzling golden light. The surface was hazy, like a glowing bubble. He pushed the box closer. "Please, take a careful look and see if you recognize it." Han Li brought the sphere to his eyes. It looked delicate and soft, almost flexible, but it contained no spiritual energy. He wrapped his finger in a layer of azure light and gently poked the sphere. It yielded like a soft bubble. A look of shock crossed Han Li's face. He tried to extend his spiritual sense into the sphere, but it was immediately repelled. Undeterred, he increased the intensity of his probing, forcing threads of spiritual perception into the sphere. Suddenly, a strange scene unfolded. Golden light flickered repeatedly on the surface, and the sphere expanded one moment and contracted the next, pulsating rhythmically like the beating of a vigorous heart. Han Li tightly frowned for a long while before sending a voice transmission to Monarch Soul Divergence. Senior, have you seen this before? Do you truly believe that there is nothing that I have not experienced and nothing I do not know? Monarch Soul Divergence replied bluntly. No, I do not know what it is. But since it is able to block your spiritual sense, it could be considered a rare treasure. Ask him in detail where he acquired this item. Then you can decide whether or not you will take it. Han Li inwardly chuckled at this response. With a flicker of his eyes, he withdrew his spiritual sense from the golden bubble and carefully placed the jade box back on the table. How was it? Did fellow Taoist recognize it? Jin Yuan asked eagerly, his voice tinged with anticipation. Apologies, my experience is still too lacking. I could not recognize it, Han Li said, adopting a sorrowful expression, though there was a faint smile hidden at the corner of his lips. Jin Yuan's face fell. Even fellow Taoist was not able to recognize it. He murmured, a hint of disappointment in his tone. I had hoped that you could discern how to use it from the reaction it produced. Han Li smiled casually. That strange reaction was merely the result of wrapping a large amount of spiritual sense around it. Although I do not know what it is, it certainly qualifies as a rare treasure. Oh, so that was how it happened, Jin Yuan said, his skepticism giving way to renewed curiosity. He focused his spiritual sense on the golden bubble once more, and golden light flickered faintly, pulsing gently under his probing. After a long moment, Jin Yuan sighed and withdrew his spiritual sense, his expression tired. It seems I have made a fool of myself, he admitted, his tone filled with genuine admiration. Fellow Taoist's spiritual sense is far stronger than mine. He had initially believed that Han Li's cultivation level was on par with his own. However, he now realized that even his greatest effort barely stirred the bubble. While Han Li's minor probing had elicited a significant reaction, this confirmed to him that Han Li was a carefully nurtured sect disciple with immense potential. Han Li merely smiled and allowed him this impression. Brother Jin, where did you acquire this item? From its peculiar nature, does it have a specific origin? Of course, if it is difficult for you to say, you do not have to answer. Han Li asked calmly, his voice neutral yet probing. Jin Yuan hesitated, his gaze dropping for a moment. Then, with a bitter smile, he spoke. It is no secret where this item came from. But I fear you would not believe me if I told you. The matter is rather incredible. Han Li grinned lightly. If you do not say it, how am I supposed to believe it? Perhaps if I know where it came from, I might recognize the item or recall something similar. Jin Yuan sighed deeply, as though recalling painful memories. It is not worth hiding. But in order to acquire this item, many of my good friends died, and I did not want the memory to remain fresh in my mind. Han Li listened intently, sensing the weight of Jin Yuan's experience. Fellow Taoist may have guessed, but I am a loose cultivator. Jin Yuan continued, his tone carrying a mixture of pride and regret. I practice an earth attribute cultivation art. My other abilities may seem unremarkable, but I possess an earth spirit constitution and excel in earth movement techniques. If not for my poor spiritual roots, many large sects would have competed to take me as a disciple. He paused, wearing a look of regret before continuing. When my cultivation reached a certain point, I developed a fondness for exploring ancient cultivator ruins or curiosities in the wilderness. Hoping to find treasures, ancient cultivator residences and relics, however, are difficult to locate. I did make some gains, but my efforts took up considerable time. That is, until 3 years ago. Jin Yuan paused again, his tone growing sullen. 3 years ago, a good friend of mine sent me an invitation. He had discovered the tomb of an ancient cultivator and wished to use my earth movement techniques to help probe it. He promised I would receive a portion of any treasures we found. I was elated and promptly agreed. We went together with a few other close friends. It was then that I realized the tomb was extraordinary. Once inside, we discovered, his voice trembled slightly as he recalled the events. We discovered that the tomb actually belonged to an illustrious mortal monarch from ancient times, widely known as the glorious Blaze Monarch. Initially, we were disappointed, believing our trip would be in vain. After all, Mortal treasures are usually of little interest to cultivators. Yet, to our astonishment, the tomb contained numerous magic tools and precious cultivator materials buried with the king. We were overjoyed, but then the decayed husks in the room suddenly came to life. Forming invulnerable soldiers, our magic tools and techniques were ineffective against them. Most of my companions were torn apart, unable to defend themselves, and then, a strange sound came from the monarch's coffin, as if the glorious Blaze monarch himself might awaken. Fortunately, I was able to flee using my earth movement techniques. The others did not survive. Jin Yuan's complexion turned pale as he recalled the terrifying scene. Han Li, listening carefully, pointed toward the jade box. Then that item is. It was one of the offerings on top of the monarch's coffin. I took it as I fled. Jin Yuan explained. I had hoped it would be a great treasure. Yet when I brought it to various market cities, none could identify it. While all recognized it as unordinary, no one was willing to pay a high enough price. It has remained with me ever since, he added, a gloomy expression settling over his features. Han Li studied him with curiosity. Since it was an item buried with an ancient monarch, it is understandable that no one recognizes it. Countless items from ancient times have been lost to the cultivation world. But questions remain. If a mortal monarch possessed cultivator items and became a walking corpse, why did this occur? And did you not have anyone else explore the tomb? Of course I did. I brought a large group of high-grade cultivators. But who could have known that the tomb would vanish upon our return? Leaving only wilderness? The secret mark one had placed at the entrance remained. Yet the tomb itself had disappeared. Jin Yuan said, his expression turning sullen once more. Han Li frowned, realizing that Jin Yuan was the sole survivor and that the aftermath of the incident must have been difficult for him. After a moment of thought, he asked calmly, fellow Taoist, could you tell me where the ancient tomb was? Jin Yuan gritted his teeth. If it still exists, it would be deep in the Snowmound mountain range. A glint flickered in Han Li's eyes. The Snowmound mountain range? You mentioned cultivators often disappear there. Could this be related? It is possible. If fellow Taoist is interested, I can give you the tomb's location. Perhaps you can discover something there, Jin Yuan said, producing a jade slip and imprinting information onto it before handing it to Han Li. After a moment of silence, Han Li accepted the jade slip and said calmly, good, if I have the time, I will take a look. Jin Yuan chuckled warmly, relieved to share his experience. It seems we have become quick friends. It has been a long time since I could discuss my bitter experiences. Since you are so interested, I will sell the item to fellow Taoist. Only 100 spirit stones. How about it? Han Li smiled, feeling the price was low but wanting to ensure Jin Yuan did not suffer a loss. 100 spirit stones is quite cheap. I will give you 200 instead. He touched his storage pouch and handed over 2 mid-grade spirit stones. Jin Yuan's eyes lit up. He thanked Han Li politely and handed over the jade box containing the golden bubble. Han Li received it carefully, placing it into his storage pouch. Completing the transaction, Jin Yuan looked satisfied, as though he feared Han Li might change his mind. At that moment, Han Li's spirit beast pouch began to stir, releasing a strange cry. This is, Jin Yuan exclaimed in shock. Han Li glanced at his spirit beast pouch calmly. It's only a few low-grade spirit beasts that I nurtured. They must have thought the box was a treat and were excited. Jin Yuan was doubtful when he heard Han Li's explanation, but he did not pursue the matter. Instead, he chatted a little longer with him before finally taking his leave. As the sound of Jin Yuan's footsteps faded, Han Li's smile slowly disappeared, replaced by a dark and contemplative expression. He reached for the jade box and held it silently, examining it with focused eyes. Monarch Soul Divergence's voice broke the silence, calm yet probing. What, do you plan on truly investigating that ancient tomb? Han Li sneered lightly, a trace of sarcasm in his tone. Of course not. I do not know if his words were entirely true, and I am not about to throw myself into such danger like some reckless novice. But I cannot deny that I am curious about the monarch's tomb. Once I restore my cultivation, I might delve deeper to see what secrets it holds. Still, It is clear that Jin Yuan did not reveal this information out of kindness. He claimed we had become quick friends. But does he take me for a child? How could an old cultivator like him so easily disclose such a secret to a stranger? His eagerness is certain to be a trap. That is correct, Monarch Soul Divergence replied, his tone serious. If it were those young cultivators who had just left their sect, they would be easily deceived by such tactics. He believes he has gained your trust, likely intending to betray you later. It reminds me of when His voice abruptly trailed off into a sigh. Han Li chuckled softly. Oh, were you once deceived by a similar trick, senior? The elder's laughter carried a hint of embarrassment. I was young once too. It is not so strange. Han Li nodded, not pressing further. He then noticed the weeping soul beast reacting strangely to the jade box. His face fell blank as he slapped his spirit beast pouch, releasing a streak of black light onto the table. From it emerged a miniature, foot-tall monkey, its fur as black as night. The little creature sniffed the air cautiously, its gaze locking onto the golden bubble in the box with a mixture of hesitation and intrigue. Han Li joined his spiritual sense with the weeping soul beast to understand its reaction. From what he sensed, the monkey was both fearful and excited. Before Han Li could process the situation, black yin qi suddenly enveloped the weeping soul beast. With a determined charge, it plunged headfirst into the golden bubble. Instantly, the bubble shone brilliantly, releasing a wisp of gray flame that enveloped the beast's body. The weeping soul beast grimaced in apparent pain, its body emanating pitch black qi to counter the gray flames. Han Li's brow furrowed tightly. Although he could not understand the mechanism entirely, it seemed that the beast was drawing support from the gray flames to cultivate some unknown power. Most astonishingly, the golden bubble itself began to overflow with intense spiritual qi fluctuations, as though the gray flames had awakened a hidden energy within. Wait, I have seen something like this before. Monarch Soul Divergence yelped in surprise. Han Li looked at him curiously. Has Senior recalled something? The elder's voice turned solemn. Let me think, it was a very long time ago. Han Li remained silent, turning his gaze back to the weeping soul beast. He observed the bubble and the gray flames, pondering what could be happening. After a long moment, Monarch Soul Divergence's voice carried astonishment. I remember now, long ago, I witnessed something similar in a 10,000-year-old corpse monarch. Once a senior monk of a Buddhist sect, after becoming a corpse monarch, he refined a crystal relic into an immensely powerful protective treasure. Upon release, it would render him invulnerable for a brief period. I suffered greatly under its power back then. However, the relic I saw was silver, and it should have been hidden within the corpse monarch's body. How could a Foundation establishment cultivator like Jin Yuan have obtained such a treasure? Han Li's eyes flickered with curiosity and concern. You were at its mercy. If it is so powerful, it must be an extremely precious treasure. But setting aside how it was acquired, do you think it could harm the weeping soul beast? Monarch Soul Divergence's voice softened with insight. Have you not realized? Your spirit beast is currently absorbing the corpse flames contained within the relic. Not only are you an anomaly, but all of your spirit beasts are marvels. This one is specialized in restraining ghosts and spirits. In all my years, I have never encountered a beast like it. Han Li examined the situation and observed that the weeping soul beast's yin qi was slowly consuming the gray flames. Relief washed over him, reflecting on the elder's words. He smiled wryly. This beast has greatly deviated from its original cultivation path and has evolved multiple times. It is difficult to even call it a typical weeping soul beast anymore. Oh, a spirit beast variant. Then, Monarch Soul Divergence mused. That design of a demon ghost on its back makes sense now. The light gray flames are pure corpse flames. Over 10,000 years old. Common cultivators and spirit beasts would perish if they came into contact with them. Yet this one consumes them fearlessly. Remarkable. However, it appears the treasure is not fully refined and does not yet recognize a master. Or the corpse monarch that created it would have tracked it down regardless of distance. Quite peculiar. Han Li smiled. It still has not recognized a master? In that case, Once the weeping soul beast finishes absorbing the corpse flames, I will have acquired a treasure for free. TCH. I had never imagined I would obtain a precious Buddhist relic before even acquiring a Buddhist technique. I am eager to see the power of the relic's barrier form. Monarch soul divergence continued. I must clarify. This is not just any crystal relic but a Vajra relic. Most crystal relics are white, with only a few in other colors. Only golden relics are considered Vajra relics, and they are extraordinarily rare. Cultivators who refine Vajra relics are often appointed as Vajra protectors of their sect, a role akin to the enforcement elder in other sects. Han Li's eyes flickered. So this relic should be even more formidable than the one you encountered before? Presumably, yes, the elder replied cautiously. Vajra relics are renowned in other sects, but I have never had the chance to test them, so it is difficult to say for certain. Han Li prepared to inquire further when the golden bubble suddenly trembled. A tiny, grain-sized speck of green light shot out from it. Alarmed, he concentrated his spiritual sense, tracing the speck as it bounced through the air, guided by the concealed energy he had surrounded it with. The weeping soul beast snorted, releasing a mist of light that dragged the green speck back into the bubble, consuming it into its stomach. Han Li frowned tightly, beginning to piece together the situation. Far away, in a grave room over 1,000 kilometers away, 3 stone coffins were arranged side by side in a massive chamber. The room was over 300 meters wide, its walls engraved with ancient murals, and faintly illuminated by enormous copper jars at each corner, all filled with raging green flames. At the very moment the green light was absorbed by the weeping soul beast, a pained yell echoed from one of the coffins. The lid of the coffin shot 10 meters into the air before crashing down with a heavy bang. Black chi surged outward, forming a tall, imposing silhouette that rose from within. My royal son, what happened? Why are you angry? A calm, deep voice spoke from the coffin in the middle. The black-clad figure shrouded in chi roared several times before finally collecting itself. My thread of spiritual sense is gone. Your thread of spiritual sense is gone? A smooth, feminine voice echoed from the smaller coffin nearby. Perhaps someone discovered the incarnation you sent out and acted. It is not serious, as long as you continue cultivating the underworld river corpse arts your Lord Father gave you. You will restore it soon. Why fly into a rage? Can you not control your temperament? The tall silhouette beat its chest, groaning. But, my Vajra barrier. Vajra barrier? You mean the barrier I refined from the monk I killed the last time I awakened? I already helped you refine most of it before handing it over. Why has it not yet recognized you as its master? The middle-aged voice questioned. Icy and stern. The black silhouette stammered, flustered, unsure of what to say. Great King, please do not blame the prince. I have already spoken with him about this matter. A groan sounded from the smaller coffin, its lid sliding open to reveal a slender figure sitting upright, though the dim light made it difficult to discern her features clearly. What's going on? The middle-aged voice asked with a softer tone. Beloved concubine, explain it to me. That Vajra barrier was an extremely precious treasure. I saw that my son's magic power was still shallow, so I had given it to him for his protection. Or I would have used it for myself. The woman's voice lingered in hesitation before letting out a sigh and saying, Several years ago, while your majesty slept, the prince had sent his incarnation to the surface, intending on drawing the power of moonlight in order to refine the treasure. But just as he was about to conduct the master recognition ceremony, a group of mortals suddenly intruded from the outside. Because the prince was absorbing the power of moonlight, a majority of the palace's restrictions remained dormant. As a result, the cultivators went as far as to intrude upon the prince's main room. Helpless, the prince could only temporarily halt the ceremony and activate the corpse puppets to help dispose of the cultivators. However, one of them was rather clever and had seen through the prince's identity as a corpse monarch and immediately pleaded to be placed under any restriction in exchange for his life. The prince saw some potential in taking him in and placed him under the restriction. The middle-aged man's voice was impatient. And what does this have to do with the Vajra relic? Please calm yourself, Your Majesty. The woman hurriedly explained. The point is that the old man gave the prince an idea. The old man said that he would be able to easily collect the primal souls of cultivators from the outside world. There would be no need for us to go through the effort of searching for them ourselves. Oh, tell me how he would do this, the middle-aged man's voice demanded. Tinged with curiosity. It is quite simple, the woman continued. That person suggested the prince hand over a rare and strange treasure to him, hiding a strand of spiritual sense inside it. Afterwards, he would sell the item to lone vagrant cultivators, luring them to take the initiative to locate the prince's tomb. Naturally, this would lead them to their demise. But even if they did not go to the tomb, the prince's thread of spiritual sense would eventually activate the hidden restrictions within the treasure, exterminating the holder and trapping their soul inside before returning it to the tomb. However, the treasure must be exceptionally rare, and any trace of the prince's spiritual sense or the corpse flame contained within it must be completely concealed, or the scheme would fail entirely. The middle-aged man interrupted coldly. There is no need to continue. Surely, the prince handed over the Vajra Relic before it was refined to recognize the prince as its master. It is only with the relic's Buddhist nature that the corpse chi could be concealed. That is correct, the woman agreed, because once the prince is recognized as its master, the Vajra Relic would no longer conceal the corpse chi. Given the large number of cultivator souls the prince requires, he took the risk and handed it over. I specifically instructed the old man not to provoke any cultivators above core formation stage to avoid revealing our actions. Over the past few years, many cultivators were delivered to us without mishaps. But now, it seems that old man has disobeyed, causing the treasure to be seized and the prince's thread of spiritual sense to be destroyed. Later, we shall activate the restriction on this person's primal soul and interrogate him properly. The middle-aged man coldly snorted. How many cultivator souls were collected in this minor scheme? I already have General Jade scheming something. Once he completes it, we will have a steady supply of cultivator souls, and no further luring will be necessary. The woman gasped. Is that the reason your majesty sent General Jade outside a few years ago and returned alone? Yes, General Jade is now impersonating someone, controlling a cultivator clan, and having them work for us. To conceal himself, he even manipulated an alliance of clans to exterminate a Buddhist clan. The Buddhist clan elders sensed something was wrong and attempted to inform a nearby Buddhist sect. But I personally exterminated their core formation cultivators. Afterwards, General Jade led the other clans to massacre the remaining members. The middle-aged man recounted, a trace of sinister satisfaction in his voice. The woman's tone was now one of shock. Then your majesty's plan is? The man chuckled darkly. Hee. It is simple. This was an idea given by the Heavenwind monarch of Xianxia Mountain when he last visited. He did the same and was never discovered. If we are careful, we will have a secure supply of cultivator souls for the next 300 years. If anything goes wrong, we can move the tomb and disappear. Apart from a few old eccentrics in the Great Jin, who could possibly stop me? The Heavenwind monarch? He is no ordinary character. Why would he reveal such a secret? Perhaps he is scheming something. The woman said, her worry evident. A scheme? Of course he was scheming, the man said angrily. He took 3 heartblood pills as payment for the secret he gave me. Even so, I feel uneasy. Xianxia Mountain's devil pair is not to be trusted. Perhaps he seeks to lure your majesty away from the tomb. With our 3 souls fused with the tomb, few could challenge us while we remain inside, the woman said, a hint of fear in her voice. The man's tone softened, yet remained resolute. Beloved concubine, your words are reasonable. I will take action to prevent this. Whenever I leave, I will fully activate the tomb's restrictions and travel carefully. The devil pair will not know when I depart. The woman's voice turned sweet. It will be fine so long as you are careful. Your Majesty, in truth, there should be no need for you to act personally. You can leave matters to me or your incarnations. So long as you remain safe, I will gladly face any formidable enemy. The middle-aged man explained patiently. For this plan to work, all noble clans in the Guaning Prefecture must be under my control. When I last left, I dealt with eccentric Kong without harming my body. I was lightly wounded and did not continue involvement. The other two noble clans, though lacking nascent soul cultivators, come from extraordinary backgrounds. They possess rare treasures effective against heretics like us. I suspect these clans were established by their originating sects to monitor me. But after being dormant for over 1,000 years, they forgot, and I can now deal with them in one go. By the time these sects discover me, I will have broken through to the next realm with the aid of the cultivator souls, allowing me to refine a heavenly corpse body. The woman congratulated him. Then allow me to congratulate your majesty ahead of time. After refining a heavenly corpse body, you will no longer be confined to this tomb. The man chuckled. When the time comes, I will be able to cast a technique to free your soul and the princes from this tomb. The woman reminded him, Your Majesty, we must also find that Vajra Relic. It is a valuable treasure capable of granting brief invulnerability. Remember that old monk. The relic took 3 days of corpse fire before you could exhaust its golden light and kill the monk. Now that it has been refined into a Vajra barrier, its might will surely be greater. The man sneered. Beloved concubine, do not confuse yourself. The Vajra barrier is a relic only corpse monarchs at the age of 10,000 years can refine. It is impossible for human cultivators. Besides me, the only other 10,000-year-old corpse monarch is Myriad Demon Valley's primeval corpse Xiang. No human cultivator would dare approach him. So long as the Myriad Demon flag remains in the valley, no sects, righteous or devilish, would dare approach. That is true. However, the treasure suits our needs perfectly. Once it is clear who acquired it, we must reclaim it, the woman said gloomily. Yes, even if you had not said it, I would have acted, since that person noticed the prince's thread of spiritual sense in the Vajra barrier. They must be extraordinary. Once the treasure's whereabouts are discovered, I will send 2 incarnations to retrieve it. If he is not a mid-nascent soul cultivator, there should be no issue. A tall silhouette wrapped in black sheath suddenly interrupted. I also, want to go. The middle-aged man's voice turned sullen, coldly rebuking him. How are you supposed to leave? You cannot withdraw the corpse chi in your body. Any cultivator would see your true nature. Speak no more nonsense and return to the coffin to cultivate. The large silhouette grew depressed, waving his furry green arm before lying down. Yet his eyes glowed crimson through the black chi, radiating anger. The stone coffin lid flew down, sealing him once more. Far away, Han Li remained unaware that killing that thread of spiritual sense had triggered such consequences. He stared at the weeping soul beast inside the golden bubble, his expression wavering with uncertainty. At the same moment, as Jin Yuan returned to his room, his entire body ignited in gray flames, instantly disintegrating into ash. His primal soul remained intact but struck with terror. Soon, he felt as if he were being dragged by some invisible force. His primal soul was wrapped in a ball of gray flames and shot through the half-open window of his room, vanishing completely without a trace. After a long while inside the hidden fortune room, Han Li eventually decided to put the weeping soul beast inside his storage pouch while it was still contained within the golden bubble. With that done, he walked out and shrank the hidden fortune room back to its original size, restoring it to its hidden state. He returned to the main hall and handed the room over to the middle-aged woman who had previously requested it, then stepped out onto the bustling plaza. It was already afternoon, and the number of cultivators had noticeably decreased to nearly half of what it had been earlier. They were all moving toward a peculiar stone building, likely gathered for the auction that had been announced. Without hesitation, Han Li followed the crowd, curious to see what rare items might be on display. At the entrance of the auction building, a white-robed cultivator stood greeting those entering. Upon seeing Han Li, he saluted respectfully and said, "Fellow Taoist, to prevent too many idle spectators, we are charging 3 spirit stones to participate in the auction." Han Li smiled faintly, pressed his hand lightly against his storage pouch, and produced 3 spirit stones, handing them over to the white-robed cultivator. The cultivator returned a polite smile and presented him with a palm-sized jade plate. Engraved in silver on its surface were the numbers 243. Apart from that, the plate appeared unremarkable. He walked through a passageway roughly 60 meters in length before arriving at a set of 4 cultivators guarding a gate that radiated a faint white light. The guards silently scrutinized him, their expressions unreadable, but Han Li ignored their attention and continued forward, opening the gate to enter the main hall. Inside, the hall was alive with activity. A man's loud voice echoed across the room as he announced, 500-year-old phoenix tail flower, 790 spirit stones. Is there anyone bidding higher? No? Then this spirit herb goes to fellow Taoist 130. In a moment, please proceed to the back to pay for your medicine herb. Han Li observed the scene calmly. Over 200 cultivators were seated at tables, each with their jade plate placed in front of them, numbers clearly shining. In the front of the hall, a blue-robed middle-aged man with an imposing presence held a jade box open, displaying a bright purple flower. A fat old man who had successfully bid on the herb rose with delight and quickly moved to the side door, eager to claim his prize. Han Li, however, paid little attention to the spectacle and moved to an empty seat nearby. The chair was made of a pure white stone with a warm, smooth surface, almost jade-like. As he lightly touched it, he noted its unique texture and pondered over its composition. He realized it was unlike anything he had encountered before, a rare material. Before he could dwell too long, a soft, amused female voice said, "Fellow Taoist, is this your first time seeing warmstone?" Han Li turned to find 2 young female cultivators standing nearby. One wore green, the other yellow, and they resembled each other closely, possibly cousins. The woman in green had spoken, clearly intrigued by Han Li's curious touch of the table. The woman in yellow quickly intervened. "Little sister, do not speak out of turn. Fellow Taoist, please forgive her rashness, she has just come out from the clan." Han Li noted silently that despite their youth, both had reached the foundation establishment stage, a testament to their exceptional aptitude. He smiled lightly and nodded. "I have only heard of warmstone before, but this is my first time seeing it. Can you explain more?" he asked casually. "Warmstone is distinct from warm jade," the yellow-clothed woman explained. "It is a rare material native to the Snowmound Mountains. Apart from being warm to the touch and exceptionally white, it has no other particularly notable properties. Nevertheless, it is far more valuable than the common jade found in the mortal world." Han Li acknowledged her explanation and allowed his attention to drift back toward the auction, where a top-grade magic tool was being displayed. The green-clothed woman's expression darkened slightly, hinting at her disdain, but her elder cousin shot her a stern glance, and she remained silent. Han Li ignored them entirely, focusing instead on the auction itself. He observed that, while the auction seemed modest compared to the great auctions of major sects, the prices for both magic tools and spiritual herbs were markedly higher than in the heavenly south. Particularly for rarer items, he understood that the Great Jinn, being over 10 times larger, attracted more cultivators and, despite its abundant resources, magic tools and herbs were in comparatively short supply, driving prices higher. This observation pleased Han Li. He realized that by visiting high-grade markets across the Great Jinn, he could potentially acquire the rare materials he sought, materials that would likely be impossible to find in the heavenly south or even the scattered star seas. As he considered this, the blue-robed middle-aged man on stage presented the next auction item, a tray containing 3 deep red gems that flickered like small, blazing flames. 3 Firesmelt Crystals, he announced, ideal for refining top-grade fire attribute magic tools. Bidding starts at 500 spirit stones. The gems immediately caught Han Li's attention, and he let out a quiet yelp. Monarch Soul Divergence's voice lazily sounded in his mind. "Youngster Han, from your reaction, it seems those gems have caught your eye." Han Li responded with a chuckle. "Gems? Even you can be mistaken. Senior, I believe there is more to them." He then declared a bid of 600 spirit stones. Monarch Soul Divergence, surprised, remarked that there was nothing extraordinary about the gems and that even experienced appraisers would not have noticed anything unusual. Han Li's confidence remained steady. "My experience may still be lacking, but I would dare say there are few in this world with more understanding of demon beast cores than I." Monarch's soul divergence was stunned by his certainty. Despite the doubt of others, Han Li's higher bid forced competing bidders to back down. The middle-aged man overseeing the auction smiled and announced, 800 spirit stones. The 3 Firesmelt Crystals go to fellow Taoist 243. Please proceed to the back to pay for your item. Han Li complied, taking his jade plate and moving to the rear hall. A white-robed chi condensation cultivator led him to a small waiting room. A servant girl soon brought a cup of tea, but Han Li ignored it. His attention focused on the task at hand. Shortly after, a bald old Foundation establishment cultivator entered with a beaming smile. I am truly sorry for the wait. Please take a look and see if this is the item you bid on. He handed a jade box to Han Li. Han Li opened the jade box and found 3 crystals blazing with red light. With a calm expression, he carefully examined them in his hands and remained silent for a long while, studying their properties and the faint heat radiating from the gems. In this episode, we saw Han Li navigating a series of intricate events that tested both his intelligence and his instincts. He dealt with the mysterious jade box and its golden bubble, discovering the unusual abilities of his weeping soul beast as it absorbed the ancient corpse flames and unlocked the potential of a powerful Vajra Relic. Meanwhile, far away, the hidden schemes of a 10,000-year-old corpse monarch and his family were revealed, showing the careful planning behind the collection of cultivator souls and the dangers posed by the misuse of rare treasures. Han Li also ventured into the auction, observing the bustling marketplace and identifying rare and valuable materials, including the intriguing Firesmelt Crystals, which sparked his curiosity due to their hidden potential. Throughout the episode, we saw Han Li's sharp perception, strategic thinking, and calm demeanor allow him to navigate complex situations while gathering powerful resources for his journey. What happens next? Stay tuned for the next episode of A Mortal's Journey to Immortality. If you enjoyed this episode or found it interesting, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to get the latest updates on Han Li's adventure. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.